you made a very interesting point. So to a degree, it would be smart, politically smart, to convince the other side that it's better if you seceded, that you went your
Yeah,
own way. So, for example, if Scotland convinced the rest of the UK it's actually better if we
yeah.
went our own way, or if you the Western people in the Western Cape convince South Africa, it's actually better if we
Yeah.
just. So that it's smart to convince the other side. Yeah, we should. It's better for
Yeah.
both of us if we went.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is true in politics generally. You are not going to win the argument or win it in a peaceful or reasonable way if you say to the other people, well, I want to have this and it's going to cost you, but too bad because I'm going to get it. That's the way to have a fight, whether you're talking about it in a bar or in politics. So the way to if you want to break up a state, if you are in a secessionist movement, the position to take is that this is actually going to be better for both parties. And in many cases, it is. I mean, I think the Czechs and the Slovaks both think it was the best thing they ever did, splitting up Czechoslovakia into two. So that is very often completely correct for all sorts of reasons, political, economic, and otherwise. But that's definitely the line you should take. Yes, you should not imply, oh, that's why the kind of rhetoric of, oh, we are getting out from under your oppression, you swine, and you just got to go in there and take it, is not smart rhetoric. It may wind up your own side, but it's also going to wind up the people you need to convince to let you go without a fight. And so that's, as you quite rightly say, that is the correct way to go.
But yeah, we have a unique situation in South Africa that the governing party, for all intents and purposes, is a corrupt criminal organization, the ANC. So
Hmm.
they literally they want the Western Cape to stay part of South Africa because they thrive off the looting. They I
Yeah.
think one out of every £4 taxpayers' money gets returned to the Western Cape. They're literally stealing from the Western Cape. So they have no incentive to let the Western Cape go.
Yeah, well, this is true generally. Now, I mean, what you find in country after country is that there is one part of the country which is generally generating a disproportionately large share of GDP, and typically it's getting back a very small amount of the money it pays in taxation. Now, this can have rather bizarre sort of implications, though. In the United States, for example, the bits of the US that are constantly like puffing out their chests and saying, "Oh, we might think about seceding again," like Texas and some of the red states, they're actually net recipients. The places that pay all the taxes are the blue states, primarily places like New York, New Jersey, California, and so on. And actually, going back to your original point, in the American case, there is a lot of uh, increasingly serious talk about maybe the United States ought to be split up. Personally, I think this would be a wonderful thing, but increasingly people are talking about the United States as being like one of those really unhappy marriages where the couple have to either divide the house into two and somehow barely live together, or actually just split up and call it a day. But the blue states there are they really ought to be quite glad if places like Mississippi or Alabama vote to secede, because at the moment they're costing them an absolute bloody fortune. Now the same is true in places like South Africa, where you have a ruling elite or a ruling group, if you will, which is basically drawing money from the productive parts of the country to enrich itself. But this is not unique to South Africa, to put it mildly. It happens all over the place. And of course, it's worth saying, I mean, as you obviously know, in South Africa, the union, when it was formed in 1910, was actually formed by putting together what were at the time four independent states. I mean, the Transvaal and the Orange Free State had been separate states before they were conquered in the Boer War. Natal and the Cape Colony were both separate colonies with their own separate distinct colonial governments. This goes back a long way. And after the Great Trek, the Boers set up, you know, quite a few little states in up in the belt. I mean, eventually only two of them survived, but originally there were quite a lot of them. My own favourite one was the Klein Freistaat, the Little Free State, which had a one-line constitution, which was that nobody was allowed to set up a government. That was their only constitutional provision. So there's a kind of historical record for decentralization, and one of the crucial things for federalism to work, which is a kind of halfway house between the unitary state and complete division of the state, is that there can't really be interstate transfers of the kind you're talking about, or that I was talking about in the context of American state. That is not sustainable in the very long run. If you have a federal state with local units which are to some extent autonomous and self-governing, you can't hope to ultimately carry on if you've got one of those self-governing units clearly seeing that it's being, exploited and ripped off by other parts. That's just not sustainable. You can see the same thing in Canada, where Alberta is constantly really irritated by the fact that it's generating a huge amount in revenue for the Canadian state, which is then being, dumped in large amounts on Newfoundland and the Maritimes, or even more annoyingly, Quebec, which is what really upsets them. So that kind of transform, shipping money out from one part to another is always going to undermine any kind of federal state in the long run.